Hey Kaz, how's it going?
What's up, Jessie? It's been a while.
Yeah, it has been a while. How have you been?
Oh, I've been keeping busy.
Did you bring my ice cream?
No, I didn't bring ice cream this time.
Oh.
No time for intros today, let's roll the highlights. Double duty for the mods over the weekend, starting with the All-Star Shootout on Friday. Final lap, Patrick Emmerling battling Bobby Santos III coming around turn 3, and Justin Bonsignor cutting to the inside makes it 3 wide to the finish. Emmerling beats Santos by .022 seconds, his first win at the Magic Mile. Mods action again on Saturday. Doug Kobe led the most laps, but the caution came out with just 20 remaining. And after the restart, Ron Silk passed Eric Goodell, taking the lead for the first time. And he didn't give it up. Caution on lap 97 sent the race to overtime, and another caution on lap 102 would set up another overtime restart. But due to too much damage to the wall, the race was called there. Ron Silk earns the win at New Hampshire. Chandler Smith led all but 10 laps in Friday's ARCA race at Iowa Speedway. He took the lead for the final time on lap 115, getting by Christian Eckes to earn back-to-back wins, his 4th win of the season. The K&N Pro Series East also took on New Hampshire. Chase Cabry started on the pole and led all but 10 laps. He took the lead from Derek Kraus after a restart on lap 34 and led the remainder of the race, beating Sam Mayer to the line by almost 4 seconds. Back-to-back wins for Cabry. Christopher Bell dominated Saturday's Xfinity Series race and led the first 33 laps. But after a caution on lap 34, Brandon Jones had the lead on the restart, and Jones earns the Stage 1 win. But from then on out, it was all Christopher Bell. Bell led the final 153 laps, earning the Stage 2 win and beating Cole Custer to the checkered flag by almost 5 seconds. That's 5 wins this season for Christopher Bell.
My guest this week is driver of the number 21 Chevrolet for Richard Childress Racing, Kaz Grala. Kaz, welcome back.
Thanks for having me back. Feels like forever since I've been on.
I know, it's been a while. What have you been up to?
Well, racing finally. It had been a while since I did that too, so I got back in the car this weekend at New Hampshire Motor Speedway and had a little bit of fun.
Well, before we talk about the actual race, New Hampshire is your home track, being from the Boston area. So did you get to see family? How was that going home?
Yeah, I did. I always love racing at New Hampshire because I get to see friends and family that I don't get to see as often now that I live down here in North Carolina. So it was great to be home, and it's always a fun track there too. So that was a race that I was really looking forward to doing this year.
Well, let's talk about that race. You said it's been a little bit, hopped back in the race car, but you finished 14th. So what was that like racing at New Hampshire? It was definitely an interesting one. What did you get out of your experience?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, our race didn't go quite as well as we were hoping for it to go. We got up in the top 10 a few different times, actually. We were excellent on the restarts. My car fired off great. But unfortunately, the HotScream Chevy did lose a little bit of speed on the long run, and we happened to end on a long run. So I think if we had had an overtime attempt or something like that, I think we could have stolen a pretty good finish. But the things just didn't seem to fall that way for us. But you'll have that in racing. So we learned a little bit, and if we were going back tomorrow, I think we'd be better.
Well, you said you learned a little bit, and honestly, isn't that all you can really ask for every time you get back in a race car? And you mentioned you were back with HotScream, and I know it was an exceptionally hot weekend at New Hampshire. You said that you guys were giving out some samples. Can I gather that maybe you gained a couple new fans this weekend?
I'm sure that we did, yeah. I think on a 99-degree day, people were appreciating the ice cream samples very much. I know I had a scoop or two during the day on race day to cool off. So it was a hot one, but I think all of us enjoyed slipping and sliding around in the race.
Let's talk about Christopher Bell, because how can you not talk about Christopher Bell? He led 186 of 200 laps for his 5th win this season. 5 wins for Bell. We're going to check out the playoff standings and everything in a little bit, but talk to me about this domination that we've seen from not only Bell, but Custer and Reddick as well.
Yeah, I mean, the big three, I mean, I think I read something like they've won the last 11 out of the last 12 races or something like that. I mean, they've definitely taken the series by the reins. But this weekend, I think we all kind of guessed that that was going to be the case for Christopher, because after practice, he had about 3/10 on the field. So we all knew we were in trouble going into the race. So I was not surprised to see him lead as much as he did and take the trophy home.
Yeah, there's no doubt that he had a fast race car. I mean, seeing all of those restarts, he just, even if he wasn't up front to start, it didn't take him long to get there. He no doubt was fastest on the track and showed that by being in victory lane now for the 5th time this season. But one of the things for you hopping back in a race car is we always like to joke about your little friendly rivalry with Justin, and you got an opportunity to battle him a little bit on the track. He did finish 1 ahead of you, but you got him in qualifying, got to start 1 ahead of him on the grid. Rivalries aside, though, some tragic news coming from Colleague Racing and the Colleague Racing team. Justin's crew chief, Nick Harrison, did pass away Sunday after the Xfinity Series race earlier that day. So
yeah, I mean, that was terrible news. He was only 37 years old, so nobody expected that, of course. So it's definitely been somber at the shop this week, missing him. He really was the life of the party. Everybody loved Nick, and he'd always pull out some really fun one-liners every day. So it's going to be tough missing him around the shop and definitely at the racetrack this weekend. But we've got him in all of our hearts, and they're going to be running some stickers and some T-shirts for him to celebrate his life this weekend. So we'll definitely make sure to celebrate what he was able to do for the organization, for everybody that he knew.
Nick really was such a light at the racetrack. We had the opportunity to work with him a few times as we worked with Justin and with the Colleague Racing team, and he was just always so kind to us and always so welcoming. And him being from Tennessee, as I'm from Tennessee, he always kind of gave us that little bond at the track. I know that he's made such an impact on Justin's life, being Justin's crew chief, and you see just by all of the tweets and all of the comments online from drivers and crew chiefs and team owners that he really made an incredible impact on the sport as a whole, and he will very, very much be missed.
Yeah, for sure.
Nick Harrison was the crew chief for Justin Haley in the number 11 team for Colleague Racing. He began his career in racing as the crew chief for Stedman Marland in 1998 and later joined Richard Childress Racing in 2006. Harrison earned 5 Xfinity Series wins during his career, going to victory lane with Austin Dillon, Paul Menard, and Kurt Busch. He was 37 years old.
In Sunday's Cup Series race, Kyle Busch earned the first stage win, and Eric Almirola picked up the second. But Denny Hamlin took over in Stage 3. He led 113 laps, holding the lead through 2 cautions, the 18 into the wall, and contact between Larson and Alex Bowman. But another issue for the 42 brought out one final caution, and it also brought Hamlin to the pits for fresh tires. Kevin Harvick did not pit, however, taking the gamble on old tires and taking the lead. Hamlin chasing Harvick, battling down through the final turn, but the 4 reached the line first. Kevin Harvick gets his first win of the 2019 season.
Welcome back to the Pace Lap. Kaz and I still recapping the weekend in New Hampshire. The Cup race was Sunday, not quite as hot as Saturday and what you guys endured, but still, I think we mentioned before we came on camera here that it was the hottest Cup race at New Hampshire on record, which is just unbelievable. And we can't underestimate how that affects the drivers in the race car, but it didn't affect Kevin Harvick. He finally found victory lane this season. Talk about that from a driver's standpoint. What a relief that is to get that win off of your chest.
I'm sure that's got to be huge for him. I mean, if you had told me going into the season that Harvick wouldn't win a race until past halfway in the season, I would have thought you were crazy. But this season just has not seemed to have gone like his previous season did. But maybe this win will be what he needed to start clicking them off. We'll have to see.
Well, and I mean, Harvick is done well this season. He's pretty locked into the playoffs. But just getting that first win and getting that first win for Stewart-Haas, I feel like that in itself, from a team standpoint, is huge this season, especially when we've seen such dominating performances from teams like Hendrick and teams like Penske. But let's talk about that finish, though, because that could have been a win for Denny Hamlin. But a lot of people think that he kind of backed off a little bit, and he gave him a nudge in turn 4, but chose not to totally send him into the wall and take the win away from him. What did you think? Do you think that was a smart move?
I do think it was a smart move. I don't think that he backed off. I think he raced Harvick as hard as he possibly could have without doing a dirty move and really taking Harvick out of the lead forcefully. But I do think that was smart because Denny already has 2 wins. He's already locked into the playoffs. This was Harvick's first win. And he probably could have assumed that if he took that away from Harvick, Harvick was going to hit him where it hurts during the playoffs, and that would not have been good for Denny and his team. So he probably played a smart move and said, hey, if I'm going to beat you, I'm going to beat you clean, and then you won't have anything to be mad at me about. And he tried, but just came up short. But I'd say all the fans won after that race for sure because it was an exciting ending.
I'd say, and I actually agree with you on that one. A lot of people are saying that Denny backed off or that he had a lot of regret even after the race and wished that he'd have given a little harder nudge. But did you see that right rear quarter panel in victory lane? I mean, it was beat up. There is no doubt that he hit him pretty hard, gave him a pretty good shot to make a move there, which actually brings up a good point. Do you think that if Denny had hit a driver that weren't as experienced as Harvick in that situation, Denny would be in victory lane? Or do you think that it was Harvick's experience as a veteran that kept him able to keep that car on track?
I mean, absolutely. I think Harvick being Harvick is what won that race, of course. I mean, if you have a guy like Denny Hamlin who's as talented as he is, as fast as he is, I mean, Denny's a great race car driver. Most people would not be able to hold up to the pressure coming from Denny, and especially once he's actually leaning on your rear bumper and on your door. For Harvick to maintain his cool and do exactly what he needed to do to win that race just shows why he is the driver that he is. So.
That's so true. And I'll be anxious to see, like you said, if this kind of opens the gates here for the 4 team and for Stewart-Haas to find themselves or land themselves in victory lane a few more times this season, maybe even before playoffs. We'll have to see. But speaking of playoffs, after the break, I want to check off the point standings because pretty interesting stuff right now, especially on the truck side. So I want to get your opinions on that after the break.
All right.
The season is very quickly winding down. The regular season, that is. Only a handful of races left. I believe 6 left on the Cup side until we gear up to take on the playoffs. So I figure it's a good time to check out the point standings. Let's take a look at the Truck Series to begin with. So I do need to note that these are the points as of solely points alone. This is what they look like. Now, before the playoffs hit, we will see all of the drivers that have a win shift up here to the top. So drivers that are not here right now that do have wins, Tyler Ankrum, Ross Chastain, and also Johnny Sauter. So knowing that, but seeing what we see here, what surprises you about these current point standings?
Well, to me, there's one thing that jumps out hugely, and that's that there's no KBM trucks currently above the cut line. As it stands, they're both going to not make the playoffs, Harrison Burton and Todd Gilliland. So that's a huge shock, I'd say. I mean, KBM has been the powerhouse team I would point to for the last number of years in the Truck Series, and they've always got somebody mostly seated at the top, at the very top. So this is definitely a surprise, and it shows that the series is definitely becoming diverse, and you don't have one team dominating by any stretch. It's going to be a good battle in the playoffs, and maybe one of those two will be able to jump above the cut line in the next few races, but maybe you'll see no KBM trucks in the playoffs.
That would be wild to think about, no KBM trucks in the playoffs. But I have to believe that we could see one or either of these guys in victory lane before the regular season is over. But like you said, there's a lot up in the air.
Yeah, I mean, the way it's gone so far this year is there's been a lot of different winners in the Truck Series. So in past years, you could pretty comfortably point your way into the playoffs. But this year, there's only going to be probably 1 or 2 guys that make it in solely on points. a lot of them are going to be locked in with wins. So I think that puts the pressure on everybody below the cut line who doesn't have a win and says, you know, you got to step up to the plate and get a win if you want to be in the playoffs. Otherwise, your future is not certain here.
Definitely not certain, but like you said, we've seen a lot of new winners, so it's possible is what these guys can at least learn from seeing drivers like Tyler Ankrum in victory lane. Not quite as many surprises here on the Xfinity Series side. We kind of know what we're looking at based on the big three domination that we've seen. Reddick, Bell, Custer stacked 1, 2, and 3, but we can't forget about Annett also having a win. He will join them up there at 4. Looking at this though, who do you think could be our 4th or 5th guy competing in the playoffs in the Xfinity Series?
So I think Justin Allgaier is one that definitely has the potential to join them and become a big 4, if you will, and definitely has the potential to make it to Homestead. I mean, he showed over the last few seasons that he's a big contender in the series, and he's gone to Homestead a few years. So he's one that I would say has the potential to step up. But I think right now the 7 team and JRM need a little bit of raw speed is what they're looking for. I mean, Justin always executes and always has smooth races, but if they could get their program just a little bit quicker, I think he's going to be a force to be reckoned with.
The races that we have left on the schedule, there are some tricky ones on there. We have a road course on there. Could we see one of these guys maybe shake up this playoff standing?
You could. I mean, right now, to me, the bubble is pretty cut and dry. I mean, 12th is 113 points above. But we have seen a couple years ago, Jeremy Clements pulled a win out at Road America from below the cut line and knocked somebody out. So right now, that's definitely a possibility. Jeremy's good on the road courses, and they've got 3 road courses coming up all before the playoffs start.
Definitely would make things interesting. Now, as we've seen this season, if it continues to repeat itself, we're probably going to see a few more wins from one of those big 3. But just like on the truck side, you never know. If we could see a new winner in victory lane, it might shake this up a little more. All right, let's check out the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series playoff standings. A lot of winners here on this left side, which definitely kind of means a lot for these guys that are looking down here 14, 15, 16, and below the cut line. Let's look at these. There's a couple of surprises, maybe. I would say Ryan Newman is a bit of a surprise to see him sitting at 15th. Do we think he could stay there, knowing we have 6 races left?
I think he could. I mean, it seems like the 6 car and Roush have definitely been coming to play the last few weeks. So if they continue to run like they have, I think he could. But I don't think that it's comfortably secure. I think Jimmy Johnson and Hendrick have really come alive as of recently too, and Jimmy's just 17 points below the cut line. So he's one that I'd look at as very possibly coming up and spoiling a spot for either Clint Boyer or Ryan Newman.
What do you think when we get down into more of the nitty-gritty of the playoffs?
You know, I think with the way the Cup Series package has been this year, it seems like it's very competitive, and you don't really seem to get a whole lot of domination by any one guy or one team. So I think it's going to be a very competitive playoffs. I don't think anyone's just going to run away with it. But I think it's easy to look at Kyle Busch and say, well, if somebody's going to, it'd probably be him, because he did have that run earlier in the year, the stretch of a couple months where it seemed like he was winning or finishing second literally in every race. So it seems like they've maybe been experimenting a little bit in the summer, trying to find some stuff, because he's so secure in the playoffs that once they start executing in the playoffs, he could be one to really have to watch out for.
Well, now that we have a better understanding of what we're looking at heading into the weekend, we have a lot of racing going on this weekend, both in Iowa and Pocono, 2 very different styles of racing, one short track, one 2.5 miles long, but you have experience on both. So after the break, I need to get your thoughts on what we could see this weekend. Welcome back to the Pace Lap. So, Kaz, we're splitting off this weekend. The Cup and the Truck Series are going to Pocono, and the Xfinity Series is going to Iowa. So 2 tracks we've already been to this season, and you have both Xfinity and Truck experience at both of these tracks. So let's start with the Truck Series and the Cup Series going to Pocono. What can we expect to see at this 2.5 mile, 3-turn, tricky triangle of a track?
Well, that's an excellent question, and I don't know if anyone really knows the answer to it, because Pocono's going to be a little bit different this time around. They're putting down the PJ1 on the second groove, I believe in all 3 turns. So I'm not really sure where you're going to see guys running. I mean, traditionally you'd run around the bottom with a big arc at Pocono in just about every corner. So that's what we're all used to, but I don't know how it's going to race this weekend. So I'll be interested to tune in and see how it plays out myself.
Well, for you and your experience, what are some of the challenges, PJ1 aside, what are some of just the challenges that Pocono brings?
I mean, first of all, setting up the car to me is the most challenging part because all 3 corners are so different. So if you're looking for the car to do something different in one corner, you need to kind of take into account how that's going to affect. If you make that corner good, well, how's that going to affect the other 2 corners? And you almost have to play favorites and say, I'll live with it in this corner, but I need it to be good here and here. So for the driver, that definitely makes you have to think a little bit long and hard about what changes you make to the car.
It's really interesting to think about. It makes me want to talk to different drivers and have an understanding of where they favor that track because it is so unique as opposed to the way that you might set up your car for other racetracks. I hadn't thought about that. Well, on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, the Xfinity Series is going short track racing in Iowa. So with your experience, what can we expect to see at Iowa?
Well, great racing, first of all. Iowa always provides a great show, and with this summer race, it's going to be hot there, and I would not be surprised to see guys moving up towards the middle and top grooves, which I think always makes the race really good at Iowa. So you're going to see guys all over the racetrack, and to me, the guy that's going to win the race is going to figure out how to make the bottoms, or the bumps on the bottom of the track, work, because that's the biggest challenge at Iowa, is getting your car smooth over the bumps.
I'm excited. I always like weekends where we kind of split off a little bit because it gives you so many different styles of racing all in one weekend. But on top of that, we have so many races this weekend, not just the Cup, Xfinity, and Truck Series. We have racing all over the world. Let's check out our weekend schedule. The ARCA Series is kicking off the weekend in Pocono on Friday. Also on Friday, the K&N Pro Series East and West are in action for a combined event at Iowa Speedway. Then on Saturday, the NASCAR Gander Outdoors Truck Series is racing at Pocono, and just a few hours later, the NASCAR Xfinity Series is racing at Iowa. Also on Saturday, it's race 7 of the season for the NASCAR Pinty Series. They are in action at Edmonton International Raceway. And finally, the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series takes on the Tricky Triangle Pocono Raceway on Sunday. So Kaz, lots of racing to catch this weekend. I know you're not racing this weekend, but you are racing again this season. When will that be?
Road America, last but not least, is my final race that I've got on my schedule, at least so far, sponsorship-wise. So that's about a month from now. I've got some time to prepare, and I'll be ready for it.
Cool, and maybe eating a little bit of HotScream in between all of that as well, and sharing with your friends. Just kidding. Kaz, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to be here with me today. We've missed you. You need to come back more often.
Anytime.
Well, that's all for this week's episode of The Pace Lap. I'm Jessie Punch here with Kaz Grala. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you at the track.